Hi, I'm Emiliano De Laurentiis, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
I was saying your damn name wrong the whole time. Emiliano De Laurentiis has joined us before, and I think it's great to have look. You know how to take things like AI and turn them into products that are viable for us. Brad is also in that world, and quite often we hear these cataclysmic things about AI, like, oh, the robots are going to come get us. Maybe they will. But also, then you do simple things like, hey, try to see if you can stump this thing. And you're like, well, it took 2 seconds to do. So I'd love to talk to you guys a little bit about what is the practical application? What are the limits of what AI is at now? And where are we headed?
Who would you like to take that question first?
Why don't you start? You're the guest.
Yes.
All right. I think that this may be a cliche, but it's these are very powerful tools, and just like the atomic bomb, they can either be very beneficial or very detrimental. And I think that we have to find ways in which to make them beneficial, and that is one of the things that I've been working on. We've I was looking at some of my old research. In 1964, ELIZA was invented. I don't know if you're familiar with ELIZA. I see Brad is nodding his head.
I'm not that old, but yeah, I played with ELIZA on an Apple II Plus in 1984. So how about that?
Yeah, yes. Well, I wasn't that old. I'm not that old either, but I read about it in 1964. I was still a kid. But Joseph Weizenbaum at MIT had this developed ELIZA, which was basically an AI, a chatbot that it was only text. And the idea was they were experimenting with it from a psychological perspective to see how people would react to a chatbot and to an AI. And they didn't call it chatbots in those days. And they found, quite to their surprise, that people really, really liked talking to a chatbot. They found they were, in fact, it was almost disturbing, and they stopped doing all the research because it was so disturbing to them that they found that people were relating to it, they were talking to it, they were, and what ELIZA was a full therapist, and it just had some very, very simple responses. So if you said something like, no, I'm feeling bad today, it would say, oh, really, tell me more about that. Why are you feeling bad? And you'd say, well, my mother, gave me some bad news, or, somewhere. And then it would say something like, well, tell me more about your mother. So it was very standard, but it showed that people really do need to connect to something, and to connect to, and the entity that they connect to doesn't really make a difference. If it's an AI, that's fine. So I developed the first chatbot and I'm not saying it's the first chatbot in the world, but my own first chatbot in my company in 1981. And so we used it was a company called Arrakis Technologies, and it was a whole line of educational products. And we incorporated the chatbot as the main interface. Remember, this was before the mouse, before the Windows, the Macintosh user interface, the Xerox Palo Alto Research Center concept. So the only interfaces we had at that time were text-based, where you typed in a request to a computer, and then and got a response. So my solution at that time was to have a chatbot in our software, and it worked extremely well because students could ask questions like, "Tell me more about algebra," or what is a variable, or show me how this physics experiment, and that was the interface to the system.
Yeah, what I really like about your story about ELIZA, and of course I was I was born in 1970, so lots of this stuff preceded me. But there's two things I really like about it. Number one, the experience was that somebody was just listening to you. You could type things in, and it would it would find a keyword and say, tell me more about this, tell me more about this. And the feeling of empathy is what really connects with people. And it's certainly worse today than it was when I was growing up in terms of, the amount of empathy in the world. Like entropy goes up, empathy goes down, right?
Yeah.
So it was, even at the time, it did feel kind of special. Hey, here's someone who's just willing to listen to me. And, as a kid growing up, I mean, that was kind of neat to see. The second thing that I think is very interesting is we've been doing AI for a long time. Like that's what that tells us. We've been doing AI and computer science for a long time. I have a master's in computer science with a focus in algorithms and data structures from UC Irvine, which at the time in 1994 when I got my master's was a top 5 program. So we were always encouraged to kind of look at the history of our discipline. And people from the 60s who come up in our discipline who are really important. Herbert Simon, for instance, The Science of the Artificial. He won a Turing Award in 1976. He wasn't even a computer scientist. He was more of a behavioral economist. And that Eliza sort of fits into his interest in kind of being a founder of AI. This stuff goes back a long time, 60 years at this point. Right. We've seen a lot of it before. We've seen a lot of the hype before. We saw it with Expert Systems in the 80s. I remember my dad worked at Pacific Bell. It was Pacific Telephone before that, before the AT&T divestiture. He was actually charged with learning about Expert Systems and how they could, be applied to management of a phone company, a local phone company. And he got to go to conferences and things. And, the hype was extreme about Expert Systems. They were going to replace the whole management class,
right?
And so we find ourselves today, everybody's worried, hey, is my job going to be taken away by AI? And right. I feel like an old gray hair saying, yeah, probably not.
Yeah. Well, there are 2 points here. One is humanizing AI. I mean, if you look at the early AI, it was early AI, for example, chess. The chess programs were so good that people were frustrated playing with them. They couldn't win, right? So the way that AI has evolved is that now the chess programs adapt to the skill level of the human player, so that you can play against a chess program and win, because now you have you're playing, if you're rated at 1500, it'll be rated at 1500 or 1600 rather than master level, right? Grandmaster level, right? And so that has been one of the evolutions of AI. And some of the people that have used some of my AIs, the students that are using them, they'll say things like, even if the system doesn't always know what I want, I like talking to it because I feel, it makes me feel good. And I think that is, people do want to interact with systems that humanize them. And but going back to the job thing, are people going to lose their jobs? Well, it's just like people who'd never wanted to learn how to use a word processor, they lost their jobs. And the people who because if they just wanted to work as a typist in a typewriter pool, that went away, right? So the same thing with AI. If you those people who are using AI to improve their productivity or their capabilities, they'll have jobs. But those people who resist the technology, they will lose their jobs. I think that. So again, there's no AI today that will do the whole thing, right? That will do the whole job. There's no AI that can be just the lawyer or the accountant or the podcaster.
So this is a real interesting topic, because I agree with you. There is no AI that is just the podcaster or the lawyer or whatever else, but there is a perception among people that there could be. And it's the perception. It's not the AI that is going to take jobs in the immediate future. It's the perception of the AI being able to do that that's going to take jobs, because you have management that expects, you know, the people who are spending the money who expect that AI can do things that they're currently paying humans for. And they're going to pressure those people and say, hey, I can do it with an AI. You know, why are we talking to you? You know, look at this Devon AI that came out, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, purported to be able to program and do all the programming tasks. It's taken a couple of weeks, but you know, finally, programming social media, if there is such a thing, has caught up with it and has given it tasks that, you know, make it silly as a replacement for people. You know, you have programmers especially, and it goes for a lot of creative things. You have I'm going to try to draw a curve here by looking at myself, Pete. And you have this, you don't have a bell curve of ability. You have a curve that starts out as a bell curve, and then it goes tail, 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 tail. And it goes back to there's an IBM study that's very, very familiarly known in the industry from the 70s, which concludes that your best programmers are something like 40 times as productive as your average programmers. However you want to measure it. And, you know, maybe it's not 40, maybe it's 38 or whatever else, but there's a great disparity between your very good ones and your median programmer. And you know, what you find is a lot of these tools that you know, for programmers that come up today, they get in the way of people who are too far past the median. They might be helpful to somebody who's at the beginning, who doesn't know where to look and stuff. But, you know, I've certainly found with any of these that I've tried, and a lot of the integration of AI and search tools into something like Visual Studio Code, which is pretty common, really. It's commonly used. The stuff actually gets in my way productivity-wise. I'm faster with a browser and faster searching GitLab than I am trying to use the tools to find the things it thinks are relevant to what I'm doing. I also know that when I find code, it's not production quality code because it doesn't know my context. I've got to go put it in the context, and I've got to commit to supporting that code for, you know, as long as this product is going to be out, or, you know, leave that code supportable by somebody else. And I think we're a long, long way from solving that problem with machines, you know, that are doing that.
Yeah. I find it funny that the engineers are trying to engineer something that replaces everybody but them. Like they'll say, marketing people are done. We've got them covered. But the reality is all these jobs are hard and require intuition and even just like a juxtaposition that you can add in, you know, like, hey, what if we did this, but flipped it, you know, and I don't know that computers can do that without being guided by us humans. So I didn't want to jump too much in because you guys are having a
but that's
chat.
it's a great point, Pete. And I was going to make a similar point, which is that we forget that all the AI that we have today is represents the sum of human knowledge. And the reason they're so good is because they represent the sum of human knowledge. You could ask ChatGPT to write you a poem in the style of Shakespeare or Robert Frost, and it'll do a very good job just because Robert Frost existed and because Shakespeare existed. And if humans stop creating and stop doing stuff, then AI will not evolve either. Now there may be a time, sometime in the future, probably a long future, where some AI will have creativity. Will be able to create things from scratch, and when it's sentient in that fashion, it will be a separate species basically, and we will have that species of whatever we want to call it. but we're, I think, a long way from that at the moment, and you know, I think people watch a little bit too much sci-fi, you know, and they expect everything to be as easy as sci-fi. In fact, I see it even with some reactions that people get with my AI. They expect it to be Avatar. You know, they expect it to be, you know, what they see on TV or in the movie, not realizing that to generate that one frame that looks like a human, you know, like a real person, is probably like a 10-second, you know, rendition time for some of the fastest computers on Earth. So yeah. So I think the expectations are much overblown compared to the reality.
So I have one small quibble with what you said there, and that is that just as a small quibble, and that's that AI is the sum of our human knowledge. I would say, and I'm parroting a recent riff by Jan LeCun. He's NYU Turing Award winner, also the head of Meta's AI initiative. And his point lately is it's not the sum of human knowledge. It's the sum of expressed human knowledge. It's stuff we've written down. Pete has heard me, talk about with my own product, of course, not the AI stuff, but just, how to do a good product demonstration. I have the common refrain that I got from comedian Stephen Lynch of write it down, MFer. And it's just, you have to write the steps down so that you can automate yourself, you can automate your computer, you can automate whatever. But we have to do that so that the AI can pick up what our knowledge is. We have thoughts that we haven't been able to put to words, put to paper. Yeah, the AI can't sort those out. So it's the best it can do is with our language. So I think that's I think that's kind of a quibble that makes your point.
That's a good quibble.
It's a quibble. It's a quibble that makes your point, though, right?
Yeah, right. It's not just what's written down, but it's also what the designers of a particular AI have trained the bot on, right? So that could be private databases. It could be the internet. It could be like OpenAI uses a combination of the internet plus private databases. But you're right. It's not it's not quite the way I put it. But then on the other hand,
how are you training your own AIs right now? Are you using large publicly available models and going through APIs, or are you training them with domain specific knowledge? I'm curious.
A combination of both. So I'll give you a little bit of background. I started the Knowledge Avatars 10 years ago, before OpenAI.
Yeah, before this was cool. I think when Pete introduced me to you and I explored that's what I thought. Wait, this guy was doing this before this was cool. That's amazing, and he's made a business out of it. So yeah, continue, please.
Yeah. So it was designed. So we had designed it to the system, and we had our own private proprietary AI system. They could so where. Okay, so sorry, I need to go back one more second here, because what is an avatar? An avatar is in popular culture, it's a representation of you in the game, right? That's what an avatar is. But originally, it's a Hindu word for a deity on Earth, right? So an avatar is actually the deity from in the Hindu religion. So a knowledge avatar is a representation of your knowledge in an AI. That's where we came up with that phrase. And so knowledge avatars was always designed to be a system where you could train this with your own content, with your own knowledge, and it becomes your tutor. And again, the focus is always training and information. We're not trying to do anything else other than, which is a big problem in and of itself. How do you train people and make it as efficient as possible? And that has been my life's work, is trying to make learning as easy as possible. Now, because of some of the tools that we have, we've also incorporated OpenAI in the back end. So we use the inference engine that comes with ChatGPT-4 to analyze your personal content. So the content that you use to train your knowledge avatar is much more intelligent today, because the OpenAI system can read that content. It doesn't have to be as structured as we had to with older systems, and so it's much more fluid. The conversation is much more fluid. And if you ask it a question that you have not trained it with, then it will go to the open database, the OpenAI's database, and get a response from that. But 98% of the time, if you've trained it with your content, let's say you're a teacher and you're teaching physics, and so you could add the content that you want. If you're a homeschooler and you want your bot to teach your kids about the Bible, you can do that too. So it gives you a lot of flexibility, and essentially every teacher, every teacher or every parent can have their own knowledge avatar that helps their child or their teacher, and that is the goal. And that's why we priced it so low. We want the barrier to entry to be very low.
Yeah. So one of the little projects that I have that Pete helped me out with the first episode is a podcast called AIAIO. And what I do is I make these ridiculous prompts to have the AI generate a weird story for me, and then I have two people read it. So like an example might be, tell me a story about how Paul Bunyan and Eeyore saved the Oakland A's. And I had Pete read that. And it was an amazing story. But what I did is, in doing research for this show, I did that on ChatGPT. And what I found was ChatGPT, it wrote better prose. Okay, it wrote really, really good prose. But if it wasn't trained directly on the source text, it could really miss out on the details that would make the story super interesting. And there's a lot of things where you can tell it's been trained on a summary rather than the source text. I mean, they even classic literature, it's not trained on all the classic literature that's in Project Gutenberg. You can tell that it's missing some things.
It's like the Cliff's Notes.
Yeah. Well, and when I use my own private GPT, I actually put private GPT on a virtual machine, ran it on my computer. What I found was I train it on the source text, and maybe it's not quite as verbose in telling the story. It's not so eloquent, but it gets details, and it starts mixing up the details in a way that, you're like, wow, that is crazy. I use the word delightful. Is when you're using these AIs to do delightful things, put a smile on your face, you're never going to be unhappy, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you use the AI, I don't know, there's a lot of people who want to talk to the dead parents with an AI. Okay, I mean, I get it. I get what you want, right?
Yeah.
And I get that your dad's written a lot and whatever else, but it's like talking with your dad's books. Probably not like talking with your dad. We need to be careful about those promises we make to people, on those kinds of things. And but anyway, I do find that the algorithms work so well that we can use them in a small context that run locally on very modest resources. Eloquence, though, the large models do. The public models do a little bit better job of that right now.
Yeah, and having a little bit of hybrid models is interesting too, because, for example, I built a knowledge avatar for seniors especially seniors who are losing a little bit of their memory, and so they can have a custom knowledge avatar for, let's say, the Emiliano knowledge avatar, and I can go to it and I can have it running on an iPad, let's say, and wake up in the morning and then ask it, hey, what am I supposed to do today? Or what am I not supposed to forget today? Stuff like that.
Hey, I'm making a confession. I need to sign up for that.
Many of us are. But then if I ask something like, something more general, like I'm depressed, and what would you recommend to get out of my depression? And then it'll come up with some excellent ideas that I did not train it with, right? So I could train it just in the family. They could all have their own login to the Emiliano knowledge avatar, and put in things like which medications I need to remember to take, and when do I get when is the pool guy going to come and clean the pool, or when is the cleaning lady supposed to come over, and who is the cleaning lady? Who is this? Who's this strange woman that comes along every Wednesday? So I could put all that kind of stuff in with pictures and so forth. But then I can have but then if I ask a general question, you'll say, oh yeah, so and those are a lot of very specific things, like in your area, these are resources. You could join the photography club, or you can, so it could become quite an interesting thing. And by the way, any ideas that I put out there, knowledge avatars is a tool, and we partner with people. I want people to create their own businesses out of this. So, for example, I built this senior knowledge avatar, but it's really just a demo. I'm not going to turn it into a business, but I would like somebody to turn it into a business, and I think could be a great business.
Whose job are you replacing with this?
There are consultants, but I don't think I'm replacing anybody's job.
See, that's the thing. Nobody's doing this. You've got a tool that comes along that enables all these new kinds of interactions, and I think that's where a lot of us are looking. There are, of course, a whole bunch of AI people who are like, oh, well, we can come in and we can replace the ice cream machine at McDonald's with AI. It seems to me, it seems like maybe that's obvious, and maybe that's something that you can go take an engineering approach to, but it's also cheap, and it avoids discovering new things that could really change the world.
Like, it's completely unrealistic to expect that everybody can have their own tutor, right? I mean, we haven't had it. Right. We haven't done it until now because it's too expensive. But how do you improve education? That there are 1.2 million high school dropouts in the U.S. every year. That's 8% of the population of high school students. There are 41% of college students drop out every year. That's a huge number of students. And how do you improve education? If you look at teachers, private teachers aren't any better than public teachers. It's just the structure of the school that's different. And the private schools usually are smaller. They have smaller class sizes, and that's what people are looking for when they go to a private school. So and you get more personalized attention. Well, we can now do that with AI. I mean, so we can give more students more personalized attention, more tutoring without the need of the expense of a private school.
How difficult do you think it is to also teach the students, hey, the AI is not infallible? I mean, I think we have a sort of a default setting that says if the computer did it, it made the right decision. In fact, when I applied to, it wasn't even to college, it was my senior year. I applied to UC Berkeley to be in their little program for seniors. And I was very happy a couple weeks later when I got an acceptance letter. And then that same day, I got a phone call from UC Berkeley, and the computer made a mistake sending these out. You weren't accepted. And I'm like, okay, I'm smart enough this time. I've not had my computer science education at UC Irvine, which was a top 5 school at the time. But I was smart enough to know, no, the computer did not make that mistake. Someone there made that mistake. I'll still accept that I'm not doing this. It's fine. I'll play football this year, and I'll go to the local, what was it? It was Chabot Community College, Pete, in Livermore Extension. Pete knows the area.
So do you think that people think that AI is infallible?
I think that is the presupposition behind the huge public marketing push for AI right now. Maybe it's not infallible, but it's far better than what humans can do. And I think the push back against it is, hey, what happens if it makes a mistake? What happens if we use AI to control nuclear weapons and it decides, hey, okay, we're done, right? Well, that's a bad idea. Okay, so we imagine these things in our head of, yes, it could go too far, but we sort of have this presupposition that, hey, if the AI tells us, look, I worked on this project, it was unsuccessful, and the idea, this was a bad project. I'll just tell you, the whole premise was bad. But the idea was to be able to take someone's resume and tell whether they were going to be replaced by AI in 5 years or 10 years, or what the effect was, right? And it's for a friend. Okay, I trust him a little bit. I'll give him my expertise. I'll go figure the problem out for him. But the presupposition on this that anybody is going to take this seriously is, like, to me, that's the most scary part of this. Is we present authority. Artificial intelligence, I would call it artificial certitude, right? It will answer any question for you. It'll give you an answer, right? And you'll take it and you'll think, oh my God, that's the answer. The AI thinks I need to, have dental work or something. Okay, it's wrong, but.
Well, I guess that's sort of the same thing as people just believing anything they read, and or believing anything they see on X or Facebook or whatever, and and unfortunately, a large percentage of the people in this world are not critical thinkers, and critical thinking, is lacking in a lot of people's systems. So I think, but for us who are producing AIs, we need to, there's a certain responsibility, I suppose, to either have the AI be humble. I put together a demo the other day for a mental health knowledge avatar, and one of the things that I've trained it to say is, I'm not a therapist.
Right. I don't know.
I can give you some advice, but I'm not a therapist. And it says that over and over again, almost every time it gives you a response, because you don't want the bots. You don't want people to think that this is the end all. No, as you said, that this is the final answer, and that they have all the answers. As humans often don't have the. But humans are not as humble. Very often, how many errors do we see in our day-to-day interactions with all kinds of things?
It's funny that like the first thing you learn with prompting from somebody who's a prompt expert, hilarious, is I'm a humble overlord. I'm a humble assistant. That's like the first thing you type. Anybody types in. And I got to tell you, for that being the first thing anybody types in, I am completely unimpressed with how humble it thinks it is. Because humility would say, it's not just I don't know the answer. It's this is unanswerable. Like if you knew that it was unanswerable, you would step up and say that. If you said you probably don't want to know the answer. Let me give you an example of don't want to know the answer. We got a little puppy recently. We thought he was a Jack Russell Corgi puppy. In fact, because he came from the pound, right? In fact, I went on ChatGPT with Dolly and I said, draw me a Pixar-inspired cartoon of a Jack Russell Corgi mix. And this thing comes back with a cartoon picture that looks just like Johnny. We were certain right there. That's what it is, right? So Stacy decides a couple weeks ago she really wants to know. So she orders one of the doggy DNA tests. Right. And it comes back and it turns out he's 39% Chihuahua. I'm like, take him back. We don't need a Chihuahua, right? But sometimes you really don't want to know the answer. Like we were happy with what we knew before, and it would have been nice to have it confirmed, but if it wasn't confirmed, it's like we really didn't want to know. Now, we love him just the same. It's kind of funny. We don't tell everybody he's a Chihuahua, although everybody on YouTube knows right now. Here's the really funny part. She wants to do a second test. So I kind of game theoried it out with her. And I said, well, all right.
She doesn't believe the test. Yeah.
Right. So what if, from another company, not from the same company, I said, what if it comes out different? Then you're going to think, how are you going to know which one is correct? Or if any of them are correct? Or if they just throw you, some kind of result based in scientism rather than a scientifically accurate result. And you're paying $100 for that. And she kind of laughed at that. And I said, okay, what if it comes out the same? Then your dog is a Chihuahua. There's like no arguing about it. Right. And sometimes you really don't want to know the answer. And that would be the humility. That would be the humility that I'd want from a system like this. Or at least I want that built into people, or more built into people, that, hey, I'm asking this, really complicated question, or this really impactful question. Whatever it comes back with, I'm not going to take it too seriously. I'm going to take it with a grain of salt it deserves. And I think that's kind of where we're, where things get a little weird and dangerous with the AIs right now.
Yeah, I just read this article about DNA tests. Speaking of DNA tests, and scientists used to believe that 1 in a million people were the result of incest. Now they're discovering that's 1 in 7,000.
Yeah,
it's amazing and sad at the same time. So yeah, sometimes we don't want to know the answer, and that is one thing about humans, is that we are curious. But yeah, these checks and balances. So we all know. Some of us know about the 3 laws of robotics, right? The Isaac Asimov 3 laws of robotics. And which I can't exactly remember them clearly enough to recite them right now, but I think one of them is robots will never harm a human being, get and or cause a human being to get harm. But nobody's ever, and people are thinking, okay, maybe what we need to do is embed some of these laws in all AI brains. But the thing is that an AI brain is fluid. It's
Yeah, and it's
software.
also
It can be hacked.
it's linguistic. It's not thoughts, right?
Yeah.
It's a sequence of words that are basically they're wordsmithed together by a Markov chain, right? How do you enforce that? Yeah, that's a anyway. It's that kind of stuff's pretty weird. Pete,
Yes, I was wondering
what are we missing?
when we think about things like the dog's DNA test, we're also still trusting that the robot in charge of that test is accurate, and we also have the tricksters. Like if you were going to teach something, you can teach it whatever you want. You can also come in and infiltrate that teaching and say yes means no every single time, or whatever it is. I know that if you look me up and my resume online, there's been enough of a hallucination that it's perpetuated into a truth. That I have a PhD from Michigan and I was a Green Beret. I am none of these things. I never claimed that.
You don't have the.
Yeah. It becomes a truth though, right? And I just said it right now. And so some robot somewhere crawls this transcript. I just said it myself and it makes it real, even though it's not.
Certainly the larger the data set with these kinds of algorithms, the less truthy you're going to get answers. Keep your data set small, keep it basically searchable, and you'll get more truthiness. But you get and you get conflicting data sometimes too. I mean, somebody might be impersonating P.J. Turner, and they put their resume up and it's been scanned, and suddenly that's given the same weight as your real resume. It goes to this unexpressed thoughts, but also bad thoughts that are expressed. It's kind of the same problem. We're dealing in language, not thinking.
So the whole hallucination problem is obviously has become very prevalent and important. You don't want an AI to hallucinate, especially if it's driving your car. But that's why what I've embedded in the stuff that we have is that it looks at your content first, whatever you've trained it with, and so 98% of the time it never goes outside of those walls and stays within those walls. That's an important aspect to things. You want, and I think AI has to be controlled, and I'm not sure where it's going, but we heard was it recently Gemini had to be taken offline because of its errors. I didn't even follow that carefully because it just happens so often these days that I don't think about it too much.
I mean, people weren't down with Black George Washington. I mean, my first question when they had Black George Washington was, did he have wooden teeth? And it turned out he had nice straight white teeth, nice straight white teeth. That absolutely ruins Black George Washington. He needed to have the wooden teeth. Then it would have been okay.
What about the times when the answer is all of the above or some of the above, and even then the answer is correct, except for when the guy getting off the freeway flips his car and dies, and he's no longer the answer. I mean, there's all these variables that go into. We think history is linear and it's univariate, but nothing is. Nothing works like that. And so, how do you teach your AI to deal with these things where it's luck comes into the equation, chaos comes into the equation?
Yeah, one case at a time. They like one of the things they say about Tesla is to sort of get to a baseline of self-driving, it comes pretty quick. I mean, it's cheap computationally, it's cheap programmatically. I mean, there's a guy with an open source project who taught his car, with 2 cameras to follow the white lines on a freeway. Like that's kind of easy. That's in the realm of hobbyists can do it, and maybe that's like 40% of self-driving, and then the additional 40%. Well, you need a company the size of Tesla to get to 80%, and then you find out, okay, to get to 99% or to where this is reliable that we could sleep behind the wheel while, the thing drives us somewhere. Well, that's an incredible investment, and it's more cases that it's got to run into. I mean, you got, what's his name, the Senate Minority Leader from Kentucky, his wife's sister, who recently drowned in a Tesla that wouldn't let her out after she backed. Maybe she was using full self-driving, maybe she wasn't, but she backed into a lake.
She also was using 2.5% alcohol blood volume.
Yeah, I mean that probably helped with the equation too. And then of course when those things happen, right, and people say, "Hey, oh, it's the fault of the Tesla, it's the fault of the machine, it's the fault of the full self-driving." Well, was it really? How do you've got to eliminate both the type 1 and the type 2 errors of assigning fault to these systems, so that they can actually learn from each of these occurrences and be trained. That's
and Brad, you bring up a good point. Sometimes it's that last 2% or 3% of chaos that can mess it up for everybody. And so, for example, before we had access to OpenAI, and we used a system that was not as powerful in terms of being able to read content and make sense of it. So, so if the system did not respond the way that the person expected, maybe 2% of the time or 3% of the time, that was just, even though it was only 2 or 3%, it was still disturbing enough that it created a barrier. People would say, "Oh, this it's just too much work." It's like talking to Siri or talking to Alexa, and it doesn't understand you 2% of the time. That's a lot. That's often enough that it will discourage you from using it. But now the systems are much better. So I haven't really done a statistical analysis, but it's probably less than 1% of the time when you get a response that doesn't make sense, and that creates a perception that is much different and much friendlier.
But this is kind of the problem with, as you get to these, it's more exceptional and more exceptional. As you still, as a developer, as a product developer, you still have to plan for if it's going to be 1% of the time, if it's 10% of the time, it's 50% of the time that it errors. You still have to deal with that exceptional case. Getting way in the weeds, on this little project I worked on, this AI project that was just complete failure. One of the funniest things was we would ask ChatGPT, here, evaluate this resume and give me these results to these questions in JSON format. Okay, I'm talking like a programmer, Pete. I'm totally sorry for it. Just imagine that it's this very specific format that we want. And I couldn't be more specific. Like, I want it in a yellow folder. Okay, don't bring it to me in a green binder. Okay. And half the time it would bring it to me in a green binder. And so, all right, I would just punt at that point, and I would say, okay, I'm going to get rid of that answer. I'm going to ask the question again. And sometimes I'd have to ask the question 6 or 7 times because it was in a terrible mood and it would not give it to me in the yellow folder that I wanted. And other times I could go a whole day without having that problem. But I still have to write code to deal with that problem, because whether it's 50% of the time, 10% of the time, or 1% of the time, it occurs. And that puts a lot of, when we use AI for these systems, whether we're surrounding those calls to the AI with code, whether we're having a human being do it, however we're doing it, we still have to have a process for dealing with when it goofs up. And that's expensive too. That's why I think AI is not going to really replace a lot of jobs. It's where it's going to make its biggest impact is doing new things that delight us, that if it messes up a little bit, it's not going to hurt us. That's where it's going to make its biggest impact. Right. I think you stumbled on one of those for sure.
Yeah, I agree. Like using AI to give you stock suggestions is much different from having it teach you accounting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so teaching accounting is much obviously there's a lot more leeway for error, and if there's something that's not quite right, well, you could it's just like having an error in an encyclopedia or a book. How many errors are there in the books that we've published? There are quite a few.
Yeah. How many years? One of the funny things that they're discovering now, because professors allegedly are using LLMs to write their papers or portions of them, is how many papers in journals that make it journals, right? They're going past peer review and all the process that, that's the scientific religion and everything. I say that sarcastically. I'm a big science guy. It's just sometimes the implementation isn't so great. But think about all the things that are getting past peer review that are getting into journals now that are, hey, if you expand, I don't know, what's the typical thing it comes back with? I'm happy to answer this question for you or whatever else. Or can you clarify this? And it's in a paper. And how's that get? But we've had this problem with scientific results going back 15 years that it's documented that there are things that are not duplicable. There's way too many journals. Nobody's actually reviewing these papers, the whole thing. It's just kind of shining light on it.
Right, but also, I mean, how researchers are notoriously bad writers. And I was a researcher for years at McGill University, and I taught there. And researchers are not taught to write, and if they write in such a dense format that it's almost nobody can understand it. So if I were a researcher today, I would probably obviously do the research, come up with the data, and then ask an AI to please take this data and write it up as a research report, and it probably will do a much better job than I can ever do, and obviously also much faster, so that I can go back to doing more research. So
we used to call those grad students, right? And then the grad students figured out, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to ask the AI to do it. Yeah.
And I when I write reports today, I will do that. I'll do the research, of course, and then I'll have an AI give me a draft, and then I'll have a human being fact check it. And I find that the writing tends to be clearer, much more concise, much more
provided you do the whole process with it. Yeah, provided you do the whole process. If you just take the draft that the AI gives you and spit it out as a paper, that's not going to work well for you.
No, you have to be responsible. That's right.
Yeah,
and I think that's where. Go ahead.
No, go ahead and finish your thought, because I was going to change gears. So finish up what you were going to say.
I was going to say students should take that example as well. Say, okay, you have to write a research report. You don't want to plagiarize, first of all, so you have to do your own research. But it's like it's like another level of Grammarly. And Grammarly is also AI, and it helps you write better prose. And I don't know how many of us are using Grammarly. I couldn't live without it these days.
But there's not a style guide in it, and you can't say remove all adverbs and take away passive voice, fix my passive, And so, like, even that simple thing, I mean, it's not hard to put AP style guide or APA or Chicago or whatever. It's not hard to teach it that, but it doesn't do it.
No, actually, well, I think if you take the paid version of Grammarly, it does. You can specify which style guide you want, and so it will.
Can you now?
Will.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Last time I used it didn't have that, but okay.
Yeah. No,
Pete, here's the real question here, though, Pete. Is this going to become known the 2010s? We're in the 2010s. We're in the 2020s. My goodness, I lost 10 years there. It happens. Is this era going to become known as the Grammarly and AI era of research, much as the 90s were the steroid era of baseball?
Yeah, no, because even the steroid era wasn't the steroid era. That was a thing, but you had the advancement of lifting weights, of eating better, of expansion of the league.
You didn't just take the drugs. You took the drugs so you could work harder. Right. So maybe the way we need to phrase it is we use the AI and we use the Grammarly and things like that so that we can publish better. We can make better things. I mean, that's, it is like that. That's a strange parallel.
It's weird that Grammarly's like, you're too forceful. And I'm like, no, I'm exactly as forceful as I want to be.
Don't let anybody tell you you're too forceful. That would be wrong.
Well, when I write, sometimes I write very aggressive and pointed. And I'm like, that's what I'm trying to do, Grammarly. Learn something here. I like to be a dick and back off one notch.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted you guys to tell us really quickly about what you're working on. Brad, go first and tell us like what folks can do if they want to learn more about you and talk about the demo machine.
Yeah, wait a couple days, because one of the things is you got all these thoughts in your head. You've got to put them to paper. You've got to communicate them right. Whether it's research, whether it's a product, whether it's whatever. Demomachine.net is the home where you can find everything I have. I'm in the middle of getting that right. Pete, you're great. I did a video, to try to introduce it. Pete gets on the phone with me and says, Brad, I don't understand half of what's in the video. And I hated that conversation, Pete. You could probably hear it in my voice. And I woke up the next morning and I thought, I'm glad I have somebody like Pete to tell me what's true, because the AI would not tell me what's true. The AI would slap me on the back and say, good job, man, publish that. So you can't be replaced either, Pete. How about that? Demomachine.net. That's the point.
Emiliano.
Yeah, sure. The website is knowledgeavatars.ai. The purpose, again, of Knowledge Avatars is when you create your own tutor that you could use, or even a system to answer questions on your website for your customers. It could be used for that. It could be used as an academic advisor. There's so many different applications. You sign in. Registration is free. There's a 30-day free trial where you can create as many knowledge avatars as you want. And there's a knowledge avatar that teaches you how to create a knowledge avatar. But we're also doing a weekly event every Friday at 11 Eastern time. We are doing a Discord, so people can ask questions and we can interact with other people who are on different projects. If somebody wants to actually create their own knowledge avatar, they can get 20% off just by using a code. I call it BIDS-20 for this show. So it's a BIDS-20, and they can get the 20% off discount on their knowledge avatar until April 2nd.
I really like the concept of your product, though. I mean, I think that's, as I talk to more and more people who are encountering AI and want to do things with AI, I find what they want to do probably drags very close to what you're offering, rather than maybe the full-on visions they have of, hey, I wanted to use ChatGPT for this, and to, I don't know, analyze my medical records for the past 70 years. Probably not the place to do it, right? Because you're uploading all that stuff into the public cloud. You don't know if it's going to be repurposed for training or whatever else. It's neat that you found this spot, before all the demand for it, has really come forward. I think that's cool.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. We hope to make a dent in how people teach and how people learn. Like a lot of schools, for example, a lot of the teachers will divide their class in groups. And so you have the group that needs more help, the group that needs less help, the more advanced group. So with this, kids can have access to a tutor when the teacher is working with the kids that need more help. The other kids, they may need some help too, but the teacher's not available. So now they can have their own knowledge avatar in the classroom.
By the way, a good point on that is you don't need a perfect tutor. You need something that's better than sitting and twiddling your thumbs while the teacher's talking about something you don't care about. And there's a lot of difference, or there's a lot of distance between twiddling your thumbs and a perfect tutor. And if you even covered 30% of that, you've done something very, very valuable. I'm sure you're doing more.
Yeah, also, the language comprehension is very low these days. I don't know what the statistics are, but I find that all. I get a lot of feedback from schools, from colleges, where the students don't. All the information is on the website. For example, in academic advising, all the information is there, but they don't either. They don't read it, or they don't understand it, and so those are two big issues. But you can talk to an academic advisor knowledge avatar and get the answer. In fact, there's a group in Florida that's just about to start doing a career advising with the knowledge avatar. They've been training for the last 6 months or so, and they are going to be using that in Texas schools to give students a better idea of how they can move ahead in their careers. That's another thing, another area a lot of students don't know what to do in life, or what they possibly could be doing in life,
Right.
other than what they see around them.
No, that's awesome. That's cool.
We have sampled knowledge avatars. People can go in and talk to any of our bots. We have about 6 or 7 bots right there. There's a bot that teaches chess, a bot that teaches English, and so they can go in, and there's an entrepreneurial bot, the entrepreneur coach that helps people build their businesses. There's even a wine guru bot that will pair wine with food, and does an excellent job of
and you know what the best part of that bot has got to be is that for 90% of people, you could just say something random and they'll think it's perfect.
Yeah, right. There's so much wine out there, and it's but if you ask a specific question, like tell me about Barolo in Italy, it will know all about that particular grape variety, and it'll give you as good an answer as you can find anywhere else.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
faster.
Yeah. Let me wrap this thing up. Thank you guys for coming on. Hang around there, you two, and I'll be right back to you.
Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly. Thank you